What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 32. This one's not live because at the time that the live episode's supposed to take place, I'm actually going to be filming another video with Firas Hobby up in TriStar. Finally, after a year and a half, more than a year and a half, we're allowed to go to Canada, so I'm looking forward to that. Hey, Mike, since we're not live, can we add some special effects?
Yeah, we possibly could do that.
All right, nice. But guys, I do prefer the live interaction with you because I feel like I'm actually talking to you, and I have nobody to let me know to make sure I keep good posture during this since I'm not moving around. So, Mike, you're in charge of that.
I got you.
So, guys, we've received a bunch of questions. We're going to try to answer them all throughout this episode. Let's go.
So the first one's from Kagler Tonka. He's saying, let the first question comes from Turkey.
Nice, Turkey.
He's 135 pounds, 5'6", purple belt, and he's having a tough time, especially against bigger guys, when he goes to S-mount hunting for the arms. He says, I see you look very comfortable in these positions. Do you have any special tips maintaining your balance when being on top?
Excellent question. So guys, yes, I am very comfortable, and usually what I do is when I'm mounted, I need the guy's arms to come up, or at least one of them. So usually how I do that is I attack the neck. Rather than trying to force it, especially if the guy's bigger than me, you have to attack the neck. I believe we covered that in one of the recent episodes, how to get the arm to slide up. Maybe this is 32, so probably around episode 30. It's going to be 29, 30, I believe. How do you get somebody's arm to go from, very defensive to come up and defend the neck, and then you could sort of start to move their arms up and start attacking. When you do that, it's a lot harder for him to roll you off, or for her to roll you off. Now, one thing that is very important, so if you have when you say a bigger guy, I'm assuming a stronger guy, maybe 180, 210 pounds. Again, when you attack the neck, what winds up happening, instead of people kind of protecting their arms, when you attack the neck, their arms have to come up just a little bit. And if you actually make a serious threat, one of the arms has to start to defend one of the sides. We go over that in one of those episodes. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it's in the last 3 or 4 weeks. When they come up, now it's a lot easier for you to start isolating that arm, and therefore it's much easier to maintain balance. If the guy is not just big, but kind of fat, I'm not sure if this is the right.
I could say round.
Yes, round. You have to, I usually will attack, but I will usually get off and stay top side control, hunting from submissions to side, because if you mount it and you really, if you kind of so far off the ground that you're not maintaining good base with your legs or your arms, that it's much easier to roll you. So if that happens, I would attack the neck. Because if you do get rolled, if you have a good cross collar choke, some sort of Ezekiel choke, you can keep that even if you get rolled and you wind up on the bottom. So I hope that answers your questions. And if you need any additional clarifications, you can tune in for the next episode. What else do we got, Mike?
We have a question from I Am Finer. He's saying, Fox, what led you to develop your fluid style? It stands out from the majority of BJJ that we see online. So much of BJJ instruction is about pressure, but your style is like the opposite of that. Just curious how you got down this path. It's from Canada.
All right. Yeah, I know. What's up, David? So, guys, that's a really good question. For me, I believe that Jiu-Jitsu is so intricate and technical that there are ways to get around somebody else's power. I mean, to me, it's almost like the motto of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, how a smaller, weaker opponent can defeat a larger, stronger, more athletic opponent. That, to me, that's kind of almost like the motto of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yet, a lot of teachers, may teach kind of like, okay, you take his arm and, yeah, he's defending you. You just 2-on-1 and you rip it and you go. Well, that's fine and dandy, but not everybody has that kind of power, that sort of strength. So I've always, always wanted to be more technical, because that's one of the attributes that you can continue to develop even if you're not the strongest guys, and as time goes on, you might start to lose speed or athleticism, but this is one of the things you can continue to build. So I've always been interested in focusing more on technique versus power. And it actually made my journey the first 10 years probably harder than your average practitioner, but the last 15 plus made it easier. So it's sort of, with the power and strength, if you were one of the bigger guys, you're going to get a more immediate gratification. But down the road, it's the balance of power is going to swing the other way. So I encourage you to continue to focus on almost like a human chess. How can I, at the end of the day, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is about problem solving. There's ways, technical ways to resolve that problem. And I can almost guarantee you the technical way to resolve that problem is going to be a quicker fix than if you say, okay, I got to get stronger. Which, yeah, okay, that may help you across the board in jiu-jitsu. And I do believe that strength does matter. And if you have time and focus on it, yes, build up strength, it will help you. But for me, that would take away from me training jiu-jitsu. So I'll focus more on the technical side and trying to become, basically, as people defend, a lot of times they're leaving a limb completely undefended or almost completely undefended. So rather than me trying to force an Americana where the guy, or Kimura where the guy is holding strongly, I'll switch to go to an armbar or attack the neck. So to me, that's the approach that I chose to do, and I encourage others to follow. But it's up to you. Strength and weight training will definitely help you.
And the next question is actually from the Academy. It's from Justin Lee. He's asking how to deal with pressure passing from a wrestler.
Justin, that's a good question. Feel free to ask me in the Academy, by the way. So that's a good question. So a lot of times the wrestler will, if he's on his feet, his hip's going to be a little further away. He's going to have good posture, and he's going to try to put you back to the ground. Once your back hits the ground, that's when they're going to attempt to pass. If they're on their knees, they're again going to have a good posture. They will tend to kind of try to put you down. Once your back hits the ground, that's when they try to get past your hips. That's just what I'm assuming in an open guard situation, because there is a different scenario when you have closed guard. And we can go over that in the next episode, because that requires me and Enrique to have. By the way, if we need Enrique's help, with the bigger guy, how do you maintain S-mount? We're going to stuff a couple pillows in his sleeves.
Jack him up a little bit.
In his gi. But anyways, if it's closed guard, then it's a little different answer. But if it's open guard, either butterfly guard or sort of open guard where you're trying to get split guard going or kind of get a sweep going. As you have a grip fighting, fair amount of grip fighting, there's almost always going to be an opportunity to get an udegatame, upside down armbar, reverse armbar, some people call it, grip, the bolt cutter grip on that arm. As soon as you do, now you have a good connection. You want to go perpendicular. If you go perpendicular immediately on that arm, it immediately starts to pressure and bring their posture down, which now allows you to possibly attack omoplata. Either stick with, if you feel like you have a good bite, get a submission. If you don't, you can attack triangles, sometimes omoplata as well. So basically what we're looking for is that initial strong grip that enables you to control his posture and puts him on the defensive. So again, one of the best tools I have found to deal with that is the udegatame, because think about it, as he's trying to keep his elbows kind of close to his torso, but as you kind of sitting up and attacking, he will start to push you down and try to get you back to the floor. Once you hit the back on the floor, whether it's a butterfly guard or, if he's standing on his legs, that's the time for him to pass. So you got to try to hit this before that happens. So as this is going on, what you do is as the arm comes out, you'll have an opening. And uregatame grip is a very good way to start attacking. Again, once you get a good bite, immediately feet on the hips, stretch them out, break the posture, and go to offensive mode. Again, you can go triangles, reverse triangles from there. A lot of times, if I have a very defensive guy that's kind of waiting for me to push me down, and once my back hits the ground, especially from butterfly guard, and started a pressure passing, immediately that's the time for me to go uregatame. If he withdraws that, I usually hit reverse triangle, and from there, it's very difficult to escape. So I'd encourage you to play around with that. If you talk about pressure passing full closed guard, I'm going to have to take that up next time or another episode.
And another question from Instagram. This is from Steven. He's asking, he's having a tough time in split guard where he's losing the arm and the elbow's going past the hip.
Guys, this is why I have my notes. All right, so we covered that aspect quite a lot in a lot of episodes, but most recently we covered split guard, including sort of some of the how do you keep the grip. I believe episode 29 is the latest episode that we covered split guard grips, and we also in the last couple episodes, guys, there's indexes on there. So in the last couple episodes, like what is the best armbar grip? So I point you to that. I like again, the biggest problem that people have with the split guard not being able to hold that arm is, one, they focus on holding the elbow instead of holding the wrist. Holding the elbow, holding the wrist. Focus on holding the wrist. That's problem number one. The second biggest problem is once you have a good control of the hip, it requires an armpit grip. So if I focus on the elbow, your arm kind of flares out a little bit and that armpit grip becomes weak. So I want to make sure that I focus. I can have, I usually have a light grip on the elbow or even the gi by the armpit if it's a gi session. But focus on clamping down with your armpit. The second thing is you got to put tension in your feet, both feet on the hips, and put tension in your feet. So immediately you start to stretch that arm, and now the only way to possibly, he starts to feel a submission coming on. So the only possible way to deal with it is to turn while it's still time. But again, those are the two biggest problems that people have, focusing too much on the elbow instead of focusing on the wrist with their armpit. And the second one, feet on the hips and stretch them out, put tension into it to make sure they're stretched out and they start to feel that submission coming on. So again, we covered that in episode 29, I believe. And if also there is an episode, probably the last three, that has an answer to what is the best armbar grip.
And there's also an instructional in BJJ Fanatics.
Yeah, guys, first of all, that's the oldest one, so it's got the most reviews. That's probably got 45, 49, reviews, and very well received. But that's got at least 3 or 4 hours of pretty much. I downloaded everything I know about arm bars. I believe it's 4 hours, and you can get some teasers on that on. You can go on Bernardo Faria's YouTube channel. There's some things on that as well. We might actually have covered the armpit grip on the Bernardo Faria. All you got to do is put Bernardo Faria and Karel Pravec or SilverFox. Just make sure you spell my name right.
And there's also the split guard instructional.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you, Mike.
Everything you need. And the next question, this is from Facebook. It's from Hanny. He's asking, when asked how Jiu-Jitsu helps me in my professional life or business, I often say that it helps me to become more tactical, patient, and able to make best decisions under heavy stress. What would the Fox say?
Oh, Hani from Czech Republic. Met him this summer at one of the camps.
Nice.
Good question, guys. Really, really good question. So I don't know if Jiu-Jitsu made me more patient, because I usually try to hunt for submissions and try to get it as efficiently, as quickly as I possibly can. It's to me, one of the strongest points about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I wish I could come up with a better phrase to tell people, when you're, if you have stress at work or whatever is going on, when you're on the mats training, especially when you're rolling, you really don't have the luxury to think about anything other than what's going on then and there. Because if you start to think about, oh, I forgot to, send this report to this guy, guess what the other guy is doing? He's passing your guard, or he's arm barring you or choking you or whatever. So you don't have that luxury. It forces you to be in the moment, which is probably the single best thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think a lot of people, view it as a martial art and kind of just self-defense, which is great. But this, to me, probably the single most important point about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you cannot, it gives your brain, if say your session is an hour, for that hour, your brain gets a vacation from everything else that's going on in your life. Okay? You can't do that on treadmill. On treadmill, you can be on autopilot. In Jiu-Jitsu, you can't be on autopilot. But it does other things. Going through Jiu-Jitsu, especially if you train long-term, it sort of mimics life in a variety of ways. Like say you're working for a company, you think you're doing a bang-up job, you're doing a great job, and there's two possible outcomes, two possible things. You might be doing a great job, but your boss doesn't recognize it. Or you might not be doing a great job, and there's a reason why your boss doesn't recognize it. So you might not get the promotion. Well, in Jiu-Jitsu, it could be the same. Maybe you're really doing well, but your teacher doesn't give you the next belt. Well, maybe he doesn't think you're doing as well. Or maybe he thinks you do well, but guess what? Maybe you're an athletic individual that could be doing better. So he holds you to a slightly higher standard. Or maybe you're not doing that well, and you should, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, unless you quit, teaches you to deal with that and accept that, whether it's correct or not, whether it's right or wrong. It teaches you to just suck it up and keep going until you get what you want out of this. Now, if you quit, that's it. Okay? Other things, for example, and one of the reasons I bought a system for my school, like where people come in and barcode and picture pops up and goes beep beep, and they go inside and take the class. I bought it, I scrapped it. I have cards, attendance cards that are filled out by my hand, and other instructors' hands. And I really pay attention to it because I periodically, I know people think that, they start and 9 months later, they're like, man, I'm not getting promoted. I've been training for 9 months. Well, you've been here 3 times in 9 months. That's not training for 9 months. That's maybe 1 week. And the card shows you that. The other thing is, when people ask me to compete, how do hey, Fox, I'm thinking about competing. Okay, get your card. I already know what it is on the card. If you're a 23-year-old guy that lives with parents, mom does your laundry, cooks for you, you maybe have a part-time job, you have no other responsibilities, you should be training minimum 4 to 5 times a week before you compete. You're a guy with wife, 3 kids, and full-time job, your boss is an asshole, you can get away with training 3 to 4 times a week to compete. Especially if you're in your 30s, you're going to go masters. Because guess what? If you don't train like that, this is not magic. There's probably 5 or 7 different factors that go into winning. It's who's better, who's got a better technique, who's better conditioned, who has stronger mentality that day, who has more experience competing, who, if there's a weight cut, who has better weight cut, who's stronger, who used better strategy, who understands the point system and how to do that. None of those words said magic, yes, right? It's not magic. So the point is, if you don't, I actually lost students because of that. And the guy was coming in once a week, once every 10 days, but he was competition circuit. He's wearing my logo, like, you're going to lose for sure. I'm okay with my students losing if they put in the time. I've seen literally world-class black belts, that one world championship at black belt get slapped on a flying triangle and in the first round in 10 seconds and cry. That's okay. That's part of what we do. But if you don't put in the work and you want to compete, no, that's not what we do. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you that, unless you quit. Wait, I'm not done.
Oh.
I have more, Mike. I lost my train of thought now. The other thing, you're going to go through slumps. Guess what? In your professional life, in your work, you're going to go through slumps. There's going to be time when you, for whatever reason, you're not performing the best you possibly could. For whatever reason. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you that slumps are a natural part of that progression. You suck it up, you keep going. And then you come out of the slump. It's a beautiful thing, unless you quit. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you how to deal with people, how to try to, teaches you empathy, teaches you how to be, even if you don't formally teach, how to be possibly a leader, how to help others, how to be a mentor. People, once they get to purple belt, even if you're not a formal teacher, you may never compete. They become mentors. Other people look up to them because they admire what they've accomplished and how they go about things and understand what their background is. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu teaches you that, unless you quit. So it also makes you understand kind of how to live within sort of an organization which is molded by not just the head instructor, but all the students, and how do you excel? How do you try to not just take advantage of what the organization offers, but also give back to the organization? Because guys, I know this is one of my pet peeves. Guys like, well, there was a guy posted this to Gary's post on Instagram, on Gary Tonan's Instagram. Well, I'm paying for a product, I'm paying for service, why should it just be any different from me buying a shaver at Walmart? God, listen, I feel sorry for you because you've never been in a school where you actually understand that there's a lot more that goes beyond tuition. In their early days, people get help from the senior students. If you're paying for a product, you're just there for a class, you get the class, the instructor explains it, everybody. No, people stay after class. I don't want to talk about what I've done for above and beyond tuition. I don't want to talk about that. But this is much more than for at least my school is, and I do believe Gary's as well, is much more than, okay, you come in here, take the class, get the fuck out, pardon my French, and you're done. Because if you believe that these schools are like Walmart, man, you've been going to the wrong schools. Or you have a wrong attitude where people don't kind of perceive like you are very selfish, you don't want to be part of that school. Okay? And you don't want to, listen, when my students, when I go corner them, Mike, did I ever take any money from you from cornering you?
No. I mean, I gave it to you, but you didn't ask to take it.
I gave it back to you.
Yeah.
I ripped up the check or whatever you did.
Yeah.
I've lent money to people, which I don't know if I'll ever get back. But the point is every school is different, but a lot of the schools that I'm familiar with from sort of the Renzo Gracie tribe, we take care of each other beyond what goes on the mats, and I'd encourage my students to do that, and And, you know, I always tell people, you know, they almost feel embarrassed, like when somebody's helping them out and, you know, like they basically don't enjoy their class maybe as much as they could, or don't get as much out of the class as much as they could because somebody else did that for them for 6 months, a year, 3 years before. And then when they look embarrassed, the people that are being helped, I said, don't worry about this. It's okay. Somebody helped them, and I hope in a few years you're going to help somebody else. So this is not going to Walmart buying a shaver. This is not going to a bakery buying the bread where you can buy the same bread or similar breads elsewhere. To me, this is a lot more than that. So I think Jiu-Jitsu is like literally, it can teach you a lot about yourself and a lot about life, and makes you, I believe that, I think people quit Jiu-Jitsu, people that stay with Jiu-Jitsu, I don't necessarily think that Jiu-Jitsu gives them character. I do believe a little bit of that, but I do believe that Jiu-Jitsu reveals character more than anything else. I think Jiu-Jitsu kind of shows people what they're capable of if they apply themselves. And even if they have a hard time, keep sucking it up and keep going unless you quit. So maybe we name this episode Don't Quit Jiu-Jitsu. So I think it's a really good question, but like I said, probably the two biggest thing is it gives you a mental break for that hour, and it really teaches you to just keep going. Keep going. If this is what you like, this is what you want to pursue, keep going, stay on it. It will bear results. Now you can read me another question.
We're over the time, but we'll fit in this last question from YouTube. It's from Engsberg. He says, I really appreciate you and Firas's perspectives regarding making sure your jiu-jitsu is universal. I really take it to trying to embrace this in my training. However, I am often pretty much only training in the gi with my partners. This has led me to wonder whether I should be using things such as sleeve grips and collar grips in the gi, or whether I should continue to more or less handicap myself and stick to working with no gi grips while my partners use the gi against me. Thank you.
No. Use the gi. Use the collar. Use the sleeve. I mean, that's the reason, you know, there's a lot more, you know, there's a lot more sort of lapel techniques and so forth. So use it. I don't advocate gi more for the, you know, the variety of techniques where you utilize the gi, because a lot, other than like worm guard and those kind of things where you weave the gi through the, you know, the lapel through the legs and so forth. Generally speaking, the universal, you know, there's almost always, not always, but in most instances, there is a analogous grip. So for example, you know, if I'm holding the sleeve and underneath the armpit, you know, on the gi, the analogous grip would be on the wrist and just above the elbow. So there's analogous grips to that, but the biggest reason I advocate some no-gi maybe once a week for primarily gi players and vice versa is the friction of the gi. The friction of the gi starts to slow things down. Vice versa, if you're primarily a gi player, you should do no-gi once a week, because that's going to be a much faster game. And you don't have the grips to slow it down. You don't have the friction to slow it down. So you now have to get used to slower paced game. But the no-gi teaches you how to impose a faster pace. The gi teaches you how to impose sort of slower paced game and friction. This comes in, guys, you know, like one of the things that I, especially for my higher level guys, I tell them all the time is you set the rhythm. It's not necessarily when you compete or fight, the rhythm shouldn't be this same thing throughout the match, throughout the fight. Because sometimes once you set a rhythm, people start to get in sync with the rhythm and learn how to counter it. That's when you change it. It's the same thing. You know, I have a student that's really, really fast, and he just kind of keeps going like all over the place. But every once in a while, when you get in a dominant position, you want to slow it down. Because now, once you're in a good position, you want to control. You don't want that speed. The speed is to get to that dominant position. Okay? So there is value in doing both. Again, if you're primarily a gi gi player, and I'm not quite sure, gi fighter, whatever you want to call yourself. I would do no-gi once a week because I think it teaches you different pace, different rhythm, different friction. So if you are a gi guy and you're used to kind of slowing everybody down, one day you may go against a guy that's a smaller guy that sets a very rapid pace, even though it's a gi, never lets you set your grips. That's when that no-gi understanding the pace and kind of, how do you try to get a dominant position? How do you try to get a submission without actually having sufficient gi grips, vice versa. So that's what would be my encouragement to you guys. And we're out. All right, guys. I'm looking forward to actually talking to you in person live next Friday, and that's going to be the 19th. See you then.